Jack Brennan found her crawling through the blizzard like a wounded animal, blood staining the snow behind her. The brand on her 12-year-old shoulder was still raw, the letter W burned deep into her flesh. She looked up at him with eyes that had seen hell and whispered words that would haunt him forever. He said, "I ain't real without the paper. Am I real, mister?" 3 hours later, the man who did this would pound on Jack's door, demanding his property back. And Jack Brennan, who'd buried his own daughter 2 winters ago, would load his rifle and make a choice that would tear their town apart. Before we begin, please subscribe to this channel and stay with me until the end of this story. Comment below with your city so I can see how far this tale has traveled. Now let's begin. The wind cut like broken glass. Jack Brennan rode his fence line, ice crystals stinging his face, his horse's breath coming in white bursts. 20 below. Maybe colder. The kind of cold that turned flesh black. He almost missed her. A splash of red against white. Not rust, not paint. Blood. His rifle was in his hands before he'd finished the thought. "Hello." The wind swallowed his voice. The red trail continued, smeared, desperate. Something had crawled this path. Then the shape moved. Small. A child. Dragging a bundle wrapped in oilskin. Jack spurred forward and hit the ground running. 10 yards. 5. The girl collapsed face first into the snow. He dropped beside her. Thin cotton dress, no coat. Her lips blue as a corpse, fingers curled like bird claws around that bundle. "Girl, can you hear me?" Her eyes opened. Brown. Ancient. "He said I ain't real without the paper." Her voice cracked. "Am I real, mister?" That's when Jack saw her shoulder. The dress had torn, exposing the brand. Fresh. Infected. The letter W carved into her skin. His stomach turned to ice. "You're real." His voice came out rough. "And you're getting out of this cold, now." She weighed nothing. A ghost wrapped in his coat. He mounted and rode hard, the girl's frozen fingers still clutching that oilskin bundle. The wind screamed. Jack tucked her against his chest the way he used to hold Emma during storms. His body remembered. Protection. Warmth. Everything he'd failed to give his daughter when scarlet fever came. The cabin door slammed behind them. Jack laid her by the fireplace and piled every blanket he owned around her small frame. Her skin burned cold under his hands. "Stay awake. Look at me." Am I real? Not delirious. Genuine. She didn't know. "What's your name?" "Cora." Her teeth chattered. "Cora Whitfield." The name hit him like a fist. Silas Whitfield. Half of Helena answered to that name, the bank, the land office, the newspaper. Silas Whitfield did this. "My uncle." The words tumbled out between shivers. "Papa died. Fever. Uncle Silas said he'd take care of me. Said I belonged to him now." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Like his horses." Jack fed the fire until it roared. Heated water. Made her drink tea that scalded going down. As the blankets warmed her, he saw the other marks. Thin white lines across her back through the torn dress. Old scars. New wounds. "He whipped you." She nodded. "Said girls need to learn their place." Her frozen fingers opened the oilskin bundle. Inside a document. Water-stained, but intact. "Papa left me his ranch. 200 acres. When I turned 12, it's mine. Uncle Silas wanted me to sign it away. I wouldn't." She touched the brand, winced. "So he made sure everyone knew I was his property. He said if I wouldn't sign, he'd make it so no one would ever believe me. Just a troubled girl making up stories." Jack's jaw clenched. Emma had been 8 when he buried her beside Sarah. Too young, too innocent. He'd sworn he'd never feel anything again because feeling meant breaking, and he'd already broken once. But looking at this child, this branded, beaten child, he felt everything. "How old are you?" 11. I'll be 12 on February 15th. 1 month. Jack carried her to Emma's bed. He hadn't touched this room in 2 years. The quilts still held his daughter's smell lavender soap and childhood. He laid Cora down and tucked the blankets tight. Sleep, you're safe now. He'll come for me. Let him. Jack returned to the main room, rifle across his knees, and waited. The pounding came 2 hours later. Brennan, open this goddamn door. Jack stood. Checked the rifle. Walked to the door but didn't open it. State your business, Silas. You've got my niece. I've got a child who crawled half dead through a blizzard to escape you. I have legal guardianship papers, signed by Judge Morrison. That girl is my lawful ward, and you're committing kidnapping. She's got your brand on her shoulder like a steer. Silence, then colder. I don't know what lies she's told you. Bring the marshal. Bring your papers. Bring whoever you want. Until proper law says different, she stays where she's safe. You're making a mistake. I've made plenty. This won't be one of them. I own the bank, Brennan. I own your mortgage. You think you can stand against me? I can stand in my doorway with my rifle and tell you to get off my land. Footsteps. A horse. Hoofbeats fading. Jack lowered the rifle. His hands were steady. His heart hammered. He looked at Emma's door. Cora's now. Worth it, he whispered. Dawn came gray. Jack made eggs, bacon bread, set it on the table, poured coffee. Cora emerged like a beaten dog, head down, shoulders hunched. Sit. She sat, stared at the food. Eat. She picked up the fork with shaking hands, took a bite. Her eyes widened. She ate faster, like someone might steal the plate. When had she last eaten? Days, probably. Silas came last night. Her fork stopped. I didn't let him in. I won't. He'll come back with the law. Then we'll face the law. Get dressed. We're going to town. He'll kill me. Not while I'm breathing. Helena looked like every frontier town would: storefronts, muddy streets, horses at rails. But today, eyes followed them. Word had spread. Doc Carver's office sat above the general store. Jack helped Cora down. Her hand gripped his like a vice. I'm scared. So am I. Come on. The doctor was thin with kind eyes. He took one look at Cora and gestured them inside. Jack Brennan. Haven't seen you since... He stopped. Who's this? Cora Whitfield. She needs examining, and I need it documented. Understanding dawned on Doc Carver's face. Then anger. Show me. Cora looked at Jack. He nodded. She pulled up her sleeve. The brand was worse in daylight. Infected weeping, the edges black. Doc Carver's face went white. Jesus Christ. Yes, sir, Cora whispered. Turn around. She did. The whip marks made a map of pain across her back. Doc Carver made a sound like he'd been gut-punched. I'm going to treat these wounds, then photograph them. Then I'm testifying in any court in this territory. Understood? Cora nodded, tears streaming. Doc Carver worked fast, cleaning, salving, bandaging. Then he set up his camera. Click, click, click. Evidence. Silas can't lie his way out of photographs. Won't matter, a voice said from the doorway. Ruth Calloway stood there, 60-something, iron gray hair, eyes that had seen everything. Ruth, Jack said. This is... I know who she is. Whole town watched you ride in, and Silas has already started talking. By sunset, half of Helena will believe you kidnapped her. I didn't. I know, but Silas owns the judge, the sheriff, the bank. He'll destroy you. Ruth's eyes softened. How bad? As bad as it gets, Doc said. Ruth stepped in and closed the door. She looked at Cora. Hello, child. You still have your father's will. Cora pulled out the oilskin bundle. Ruth unwrapped it. Read. Her face hardened. 200 acres. Beaver Creek, prime land. She looked up. Worth thousands. Goes to Cora on her 12th birthday. If she dies first. Uncle Silas inherits, Cora whispered. Papa's only living relative. Son of a bitch! Ruth's voice was ice. This isn't about guardianship. It's about inheritance. You branded her so everyone would return her if she ran, and if she died before turning 12. Just another tragic accident, Jack finished. A ward who took ill. Doc Carver sat down hard. We need a real judge, someone outside Silas's pocket. Nearest one's in Deer Lodge, Ruth said. 3 days in good weather. In this snow, a week, maybe more. We don't have voices outside, angry voices. Ruth moved to the window. Her face paled. He's here, with half the town. Jack looked down. Silas Whitfield sat astride a black horse surrounded by a dozen men. The sheriff, Judge Morrison, men who owed Silas everything. Silas looked up, found Jack, smiled. It was the coldest smile Jack had ever seen. Silas dismounted. His voice carried clear and loud. Jack Brennan, I'm here with Sheriff Walsh and Judge Morrison. I have legal guardianship papers for my niece. Send her down, or you'll be arrested for kidnapping. The street filled with people, watching, waiting. Jack looked at Cora. She was shaking white as snow. He'll kill me. Maybe not today, but before February 15th. Jack knelt, took her hands. You asked me if you were real. You are. You're as real as breathing. And I swear on my daughter's grave that man will never touch you again. He stood and walked downstairs. The crowd parted. Silas waited, Judge Morrison beside him, holding official-looking papers. Mr. Whitfield. Brennan, where's my niece? Safe, which is more than she was with you. Silas's smile didn't waver. I understand you're grieving, but that doesn't give you the right to steal my family. She ran from you. There's a difference. Judge Morrison cleared his throat. Mr. Brennan, I have here guardianship papers properly filed and notarized. You're required by law to surrender her. Not until you see what he did. Her discipline is not... He branded her. Jack's voice cut through the murmur. Like cattle, burned a W into her shoulder. Doc Carver has photographs. The crowd stirred. Silas's smile slipped. Careful, Brennan. Slander carries consequences. Truth isn't slander. Show them, Doc. Doc Carver appeared at the top of the stairs, photograph raised high. Even from the street, the brand was visible. The crowd's murmur grew. Silas's face reddened. That girl is troubled. She hurt herself. She has whip marks, Jack said. Old ones and new. Doc can testify. So can I. Judge Morrison himself signed these papers. Because you paid him to. Ruth Calloway descended the stairs holding the will, along with half the men here. But let's talk about what you're really after. This will. Richard Whitfield's will. 200 acres going to Cora on her 12th birthday next month. Land you'd inherit if something happened to her before then. The silence was absolute. Even Judge Morrison looked uncomfortable. Silas's voice went deadly quiet. You have no right. We have every right, Ruth's voice rang out. You branded that child to mark your ownership. You beat her for refusing to sign away her inheritance. Now you're here with your bought law to finish what you started. That's enough. Sheriff Walsh stepped forward, hand on his gun. Mrs. Calloway, you're interfering. Bill Walsh, I knew you when you were stealing apples. Don't you dare pretend you don't see what's happening. The sheriff hesitated. The crowd shifted, the weight of public opinion turning. Silas felt it. His eyes narrowed. Judge Morrison, I want a warrant. Kidnapping interference. She's not property. Jack's roar silenced the street. She's a child, your brother's child. Enough. Morrison's voice shook. Mr. Brennan, surrender the girl immediately, or I'll issue a warrant for your arrest. Then issue it. The crowd gasped. Jack stepped forward. You want to arrest me? Do it. But that girl stays with Doc Carver, where everyone can see her, where everyone can see what you did to her, until a real judge reviews this case. I don't owe Silas anything, Morrison sputtered. $11,000, Ruth said calmly. I checked the bank records. Unsecured loan, due next month. Morrison turned purple. Those records are private. Nothing's private when children get branded. Silas's hand moved toward his coat. Jack's pistol was out before Silas's fingers touched fabric. Don't. The street held its breath. Silas slowly raised his hands. His eyes promised murder. You just signed your death warrant, Brennan. I will destroy everything you have. Your ranch, your name, your life. And I will take back what's mine. She was never yours. We'll see. Silas mounted his horse. You have until May 1st to pay your mortgage. 3 months. I own that note. When you default, and you will, I'll take your land. Then we'll see how well you protect anyone. He rode off. Half the crowd followed. The other half stayed uncertain. Sheriff Walsh remained. He meant that. About the mortgage. I know. Can you pay? Jack thought of his empty savings. The hard winter. The lost cattle. No. Then you've got 3 months to figure something out. Walsh touched his hat brim. For what it's worth, I believe you. But believing and proving are different things in Silas's court. Watch your back. He left. The crowd dispersed. Only Ruth, Doc Carver, and Cora remained. Cora's face was wet with tears. I'm sorry. You're losing your home because of me. Jack climbed the stairs, knelt in front of her. I lost my home the day I buried my daughter. That cabin's just wood, but you... His voice broke. You're real. More real than anything I've got left. Silas can take the land. He can't take you. She threw her arms around his neck. Jack held her, this broken child, who wasn't his, but was and felt something he thought had died. Hope. Ruth touched his shoulder. 3 months. We make them count. I'll document everything, Doc said. Build a case no corrupt judge can ignore. I'll dig into Silas's finances, Ruth added. A man this desperate is hiding something. Jack stood still, holding Cora. Thank you. Thank us by keeping her alive. They went back inside. Outside, snow fell harder, covering tracks, covering truth. But underneath, Jack knew the truth remained. Waiting. He looked at Cora's small face, marked by pain, but still capable of trust, and made his vow. Whatever came, bankruptcy, arrest, death. Silas Whitfield would never touch this child again. Not while Jack Brennan drew breath. The ride back to the cabin felt longer than it should have. Cora sat in front of Jack on the saddle, silent, her small body rigid with tension. The oilskin bundle was tucked inside her coat, now pressed against her chest like a talisman. You didn't have to do that, she said finally. Her voice was small against the wind. Yes, I did. But your ranch. Cora. Jack's voice was firm. I made my choice. You don't get to feel guilty about it. She was quiet for a moment. Then, what happens in 3 months? I don't know yet. He'll take everything. Maybe. But we've got time to figure something out. There's nothing to figure out. Her voice cracked. You can't pay. He'll take your land. And then he'll take me. Jack pulled the horse to a stop. He turned Cora to face him. Listen to me. You see this scar? He pointed to a jagged line across his jaw. Got that from a grizzly when I was 16. Thought I was dead. My pa said, boy, you're not dead until you stop fighting. I'm not dead yet. And neither are you. Cora's eyes filled with tears. I'm so tired of fighting. I know, but you don't have to fight alone anymore. She leaned into his chest and cried. Jack held her and let the horse walk on slow and steady toward home. When they reached the cabin, smoke was rising from the chimney. Jack's hand went to his pistol. "Stay behind me." He dismounted and pulled Cora down behind him. The door opened before he could reach it. Ruth Calloway stepped out holding a pot. "Put the gun away, Jack. It's just me. Figured you'd both need a hot meal when you got back. Hope you don't mind I let myself in." Jack's shoulders sagged with relief. "You're going to give me a heart attack one of these days, Ruth." "Better me than Silas." She looked at Cora. "Come on, child. Got stew cooking and bread in the oven. You look half-starved." Inside the cabin smelled like home, like someone actually lived there instead of just existed. Ruth had cleaned while cooking. The table was set. The fire was built up proper. Cora sat at the table staring at the bowl Ruth placed in front of her. "It's not poisoned," Ruth said gently. "I promise." "I know. It's just—" Cora's voice wavered. "No one's made me food in a long time. Uncle Silas said I had to earn my meals. If I didn't work hard enough, I didn't eat." Ruth's face went hard as stone. She sat down beside Cora. "That man is a monster. You understand me? What he did to you, none of it was your fault. None of it was because you didn't work hard enough or weren't good enough. He's a monster, and monsters blame everyone but themselves." Cora nodded, but Jack could see she didn't quite believe it yet. That kind of damage took more than words to heal. They ate in silence for a while. Then Ruth pulled a small notebook from her bag. "I spent the afternoon digging through bank records. Silas made a mistake letting me have access to the Whitfield accounts when your father died, Cora. He probably figured an old woman couldn't make sense of the numbers." Ruth's smile was sharp. "He figured wrong." She opened the notebook. "Your uncle has been embezzling from his own bank. Small amounts at first, $50 here, $100 there. But over the past 2 years, it's added up to $11,000. Jack whistled low. "That's enough to hang him." "It would be if we could prove where the money went. Right now, it just looks like bad bookkeeping. But if we could show he was planning to use Cora's inheritance to cover the theft." Ruth looked at Cora. "When's your birthday again?" "February 15th. "And the land transfers to you that day?" "Yes, ma'am, according to Papa's will." Ruth made a note. "So Silas has less than a month to either get you to sign it over or make sure you don't live to inherit. Either way, he covers his theft with your land, sells it off piece by piece, and no one's the wiser." The room went cold. Jack stood and walked to the window. Outside, the sun was setting, painting the snow orange and red, like the whole world was on fire. "He won't get the chance." "Jack," Ruth's voice was careful. "Even if we prove the embezzlement, even if we get a real judge to look at the guardianship case, that takes time. Months maybe. And you've only got until May to pay your mortgage." "I'll figure something out." "With what money? Your herd's half the size it was last year. Winter killed the rest. You've got no way to pay." Jack's jaw clenched. "Then I'll find a way." Ruth stood and walked over to him. She put a hand on his arm. "I'm not trying to hurt you. I'm trying to help you see the reality. Silas has been planning this for months, maybe years. He's covered every angle. And now he's got you backed into a corner. So what do you suggest I just give up, hand Cora over? Of course not. But you need allies, real ones. People who can stand up to Silas without losing everything. Like who everyone in this town either works for him or owes him money." Ruth was quiet for a moment. Then, "Not everyone. There's a lawyer in Virginia City, name's Thomas Brennan. Any relation?" Jack's breath caught. "My brother." "Your brother's a lawyer?" "Was, last I heard. We haven't spoken in 5 years, not since Sarah's funeral." "Why not?" Jack's voice went hard. "Because he told me I was being selfish, wallowing in grief, said I needed to move on. We had words, bad ones." Ruth's eyes were sharp. "Swallow your pride, Jack. If your brother's a lawyer, he might be able to help. At least get the guardianship case in front of a real judge." He won't come, not for me. Then don't ask for you. Ask for her. Jack looked at Cora. She was watching him with those old, sad eyes. I don't want to cause more trouble, Cora said softly. You're not causing trouble. You're giving me a reason to fix something I should have fixed years ago. Jack turned to Ruth. You know how to reach him. I can send a telegram in the morning, but Jack, even if he comes, even if he helps, we still need to keep Cora safe until her birthday. That's 3 weeks. A lot can happen in 3 weeks. Then we make sure nothing happens. Ruth nodded. I'll stay here tonight. Extra eyes in case Silas gets any ideas. You don't have to. Yes, I do. That girl's not the only one who's tired of watching men like Silas Whitfield get away with things. Ruth's voice was steel. My husband died in Silas's mine. Cave in. Silas paid me $50 and told me it was an accident. I've been waiting 10 years for a chance to make him pay. This is it. Jack understood. Revenge was a patient thing. It waited in the dark, coiled and ready until the right moment came along. All right, thank you, Ruth. That night, Jack gave Ruth his bed and made a pallet on the floor near the fire. Cora slept in Emma's room, the door cracked open. Jack lay awake, listening to the wind, to the crackle of the fire, to the sound of Cora's breathing soft and steady. The breathing of someone finally feeling safe. He must have dozed off, because the next thing he knew, Cora was screaming. Jack was on his feet before he was fully awake, pistol in hand. He crashed through the door to Emma's room. Cora was sitting up in bed, tangled in blankets, her eyes wild. It's all right. You're safe. It's just a dream. But she was still screaming, caught somewhere between sleep and waking, her hands clawing at her shoulder where the brand was. Jack holstered his gun and sat on the bed. He put his hands on her shoulders, gentle, careful. Cora, look at me. You're in my cabin. You're safe. Silas isn't here. Her eyes focused. The screaming stopped. She threw her arms around Jack's neck and sobbed like her heart was breaking. I dreamed he found me. I dreamed he took me back and locked me in the cellar, and I couldn't breathe, and it was so dark, and... Shh! It was just a dream. You're here. You're safe. Ruth appeared in the doorway, concern etched on her face. Nightmares, Jack said quietly. She's all right. But Cora wasn't all right. She was shaking so hard her teeth chattered. Jack wrapped a blanket around her and held her until the shaking stopped. I used to have nightmares, he said softly. After Emma died. I'd dream she was calling for me, and I couldn't find her. Sarah would wake me up, tell me it was just a dream. But it felt so real. Cora pulled back and looked at him. Does it get better? Eventually, but not all at once. Healing's not a straight line, Cora. It's messy. Some days are better than others. I don't know if I'll ever stop being scared. That's all right. Fear means you're alive. It means you're fighting. Jack brushed the hair from her face. You want to know what helps? She nodded. You remember something good. Something that makes you feel safe. For me, it was the smell of Sarah's lavender soap. For Emma, it was her mother singing. What about you? What makes you feel safe? Cora thought for a long moment. My papa used to take me riding. We'd go up to Beaver Creek and watch the sunrise. He'd say, Cora girl, as long as the sun comes up, there's hope for a new day. I haven't seen the sunrise in a year. Then we'll watch it tomorrow, you and me. Really? Really? Ruth cleared her throat from the doorway. If you two are going sunrise watching, you better get some sleep. It's only a few hours away. Jack tucked Cora back into bed. This time he left the door wide open and his pallet where she could see him. He lay down and stared at the ceiling, listening to her breathing slow and even out. Jack. Her voice was small in the darkness. Yeah. Thank you for not letting him take me. You don't have to thank me for doing what's right. Most people don't do what's right when it costs them something. Jack didn't have an answer for that. She was probably right. Most people looked the other way when doing the right thing meant sacrifice. But Jack had already lost everything that mattered. He had nothing left to lose except his life. And after 2 years of just existing, dying while protecting someone didn't seem like such a bad way to go. Go to sleep, Cora. Okay. Good night, Jack. Good night. He listened to her breathe. In and out. In and out. The sound of survival. True to his word, Jack woke Cora before dawn. Ruth was already up, coffee brewing. You two are crazy, she said, but she smiled. Here, take this. She handed Jack a thermos of hot coffee and one of tea. Cora needs something warm in her belly. They rode out in the pre-dawn darkness, the world silent except for the crunch of snow under hooves. Jack took them east toward Beaver Creek to a ridge he knew overlooked the valley. They dismounted, and Jack spread a blanket on a flat rock. They sat side by side waiting. The sky began to lighten, first gray, then purple, then pink and gold. Cora gasped when the sun crested the mountains, spilling light across the valley like liquid fire. Papa used to say God paints a new picture every morning, she whispered. So we never forget the world can be beautiful even when we're hurting. Jack watched the sunrise reflected in her eyes and saw something he hadn't seen before: wonder. For just a moment, she wasn't a branded, beaten child. She was just a girl watching the sun come up. Your papa was a smart man. He was the best man I ever knew, until I met you. Jack's throat tightened. I'm not a good man, Cora. Good men don't fail their families. You didn't fail. You loved them. You can't control fever or death. You can only control what you do after. She looked at him with those old eyes. You saved me. That makes you good. They sat in silence, drinking their coffee and tea, watching the world wake up. Then Cora said, If Uncle Silas takes your ranch, where will we go? I don't know yet, but we'll figure it out. We could go to my ranch. When I turn 12, it's mine, and I could let you live there. Jack's chest ached. That's real generous of you. You saved my life. It's the least I can do. Cora, listen. If something happens to me, don't. If something happens, you go to Ruth, or Doc Carver, or my brother if he comes. You don't go back to Silas. You understand? No matter what he says, no matter what papers he has, you run. I don't want to think about you dying. I'm not planning on it, but I need to know you'll be smart if things go bad. She nodded reluctantly. They rode back as the sun climbed higher. When they reached the cabin, a horse was tied outside. Not Silas's black stallion. A bay mare Jack didn't recognize. He pulled his rifle and dismounted. Stay here. Jack, stay. He approached the cabin slowly. The door opened before he reached it. A man stepped out. Tall, dark-haired, wearing a city suit that looked out of place in the wilderness. He had Jack's eyes and Jack's jaw, but 20 pounds heavier and 5 years older. Hello, Jack. Thomas. The brothers stared at each other. 5 years of silence hung between them like a wall. Ruth sent a telegram, Thomas said. Said you needed a lawyer. Figured I owed you at least a conversation. You didn't have to come. Yes, I did. We're family. Even when we're not speaking. Thomas's eyes moved past Jack to Cora still sitting on the horse. This the girl. Her name's Cora. Thomas walked over. He had the careful movements of a man used to courtrooms and negotiations, not frontier survival. But his eyes were kind. Hello, Cora. I'm Thomas Brennan, Jack's brother. Hello, sir. Ruth told me some of what happened. Would you be comfortable showing me your shoulder? Cora looked at Jack. He nodded. She pulled down her collar. The bandage was white against her skin. Thomas's face hardened. And there are whip marks. Yes, sir. Do you have your father's will? Cora pulled out the oilskin bundle. Thomas took it carefully and read. His expression grew darker with each line. This is legal, properly witnessed and notarized. The land transfers to you on your 12th birthday, which is February 15th, 3 weeks. And if something happens to you before then, Uncle Silas inherits." Thomas looked at Jack. "He'll kill her." "I know. Or he'll force her to sign it over. Either way, he gets what he wants." Thomas paced. "The guardianship papers, Ruth said Judge Morrison signed them." "That's what Silas claims. Morrison's corrupt. Everyone knows it. But proving it in court is another matter. We'd need to file for an emergency guardianship hearing with a circuit judge. Get Cora placed in protective custody until—" "No." Jack's voice was hard. "She's not going into custody. She stays with me." "Jack, legally—" "I don't care about legally. Silas owns half the law in this territory. You put her in custody, and he'll find a way to get to her." Thomas ran a hand through his hair. "Then what do you want me to do?" "I want you to find a judge who's not in Silas's pocket. I want you to file whatever papers need filing to challenge the guardianship. And I want you to buy me time." "Time for what?" "For Cora to turn 12. Once she inherits, she's a property owner. That gives her rights Silas can't just paper over. Unless he proves her incompetent. A 12-year-old girl managing 200 acres. He'll argue she needs a trustee. And guess who that trustee will be?" Jack's jaw clenched. Thomas was right. Even if Cora inherited, Silas would find a way to control it. Ruth came out of the cabin wiping her hands on her apron. "Thomas Brennan. Last time I saw you, you were a boy stealing candy from my store." Thomas smiled despite the tension. "Mrs. Calloway? Good to see you. Wish it was under better circumstances. You two figure out a plan yet?" "Working on it," Jack said. "Well, work faster. I just got word from town. Silas is calling a town meeting tonight. He's going to force a vote on Cora's guardianship." "He can't do that," Thomas said. "There's no legal precedent. There's also no law stopping him. He owns most of the town, Thomas. If he gets enough people to side with him, he can pressure any judge into ruling in his favor. Mob justice dressed up as democracy." Jack felt the walls closing in. Every move they made, Silas countered. Every plan they formed, he was 2 steps ahead. "We go to the meeting," Jack said. "That's exactly what he wants," Ruth protested. "He'll have his men there. He'll control the room. I don't care. If he wants to make this public, we make it public. Let the whole town see what he did to her." Thomas looked at his brother. "You're sure about this?" "I'm sure. I'm tired of running. Time to stand and fight." Fighting in a courtroom is one thing. Fighting in a town Silas owns is another. You could get yourself killed. "Then at least I'll die fighting." Jack looked at Cora. "Get inside and stay with Ruth. Thomas and I need to talk." Cora dismounted and went inside. Ruth followed, casting a worried glance back at the brothers. When they were alone, Thomas said, "You really willing to die for that girl?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because someone has to. Because I couldn't save Emma, but I can save her. Because she asked me if she was real, Thomas. An 11-year-old child asked me if she was real because a man beat her and branded her and made her believe she was just property. So yeah, I'm willing to die. Because she deserves to live." Thomas was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was rough. "I'm sorry for what I said at Sarah's funeral. You weren't being selfish. You were grieving. I had no right. You were right. I was wallowing. I gave up on living." "But you're not giving up now." "No, I'm not." Thomas extended his hand. Jack took it. The wall between them cracked just a little. "All right then. Let's go to this meeting. Let's show Silas Whitfield that the Brennan brothers don't back down from a fight." Jack allowed himself a small smile. Just like old times. Except this time we're fighting for something that matters. They went inside to prepare for the battle ahead. The church was packed by the time they arrived. Every pew filled, people standing along the walls, more crowding the doorway. Jack had never seen this many townsfolk gathered in one place outside of Christmas service. Word had spread fast. Everyone wanted to see what would happen when Jack Brennan faced Silas Whitfield in front of the whole town. Jack walked in first, Thomas beside him, Ruth and Cora behind. The crowd parted, whispers following them like a wake. Jack kept his eyes forward, hand resting on his pistol. Not threatening, just ready. Silas stood at the front near the pulpit, surrounded by his men. Judge Morrison sat in the front pew, papers spread across his lap. The sheriff leaned against the wall, arms crossed, watching everything with careful eyes. Silas's gaze locked onto Cora. His smile was all teeth and no warmth. "Jack, so good of you to bring my niece. Saves me the trouble of fetching her. She's not going anywhere with you. We'll see what the good people of Helena think about that." Silas turned to address the crowd. "Friends, neighbors, thank you for coming on such short notice. We're here to discuss a matter of law and morality. My niece Cora Whitfield was taken from my lawful custody 5 days ago by Jack Brennan. He claims to be protecting her. I say he's kidnapped her." The crowd murmured. Jack felt Cora's hand slip into his. Her fingers were ice cold. Thomas stepped forward. "If I may address the assembly. My name is Thomas Brennan. I'm an attorney from Virginia City, and I'm here representing Cora Whitfield's interests." "The girl doesn't need representation," Silas said smoothly. "She has a legal guardian, me. A guardian who branded her like cattle." Thomas's voice cut through the room like a blade. "A guardian who whipped her until her back bled. A guardian who stands to inherit 200 acres if she dies before her 12th birthday, which is in 3 weeks. The murmur grew louder. Silas's face reddened. "Those are slanderous lies. Doc Carver has photographs, medical documentation. The brand is real, Mr. Whitfield. The whip marks are real. Your niece's terror is real." Thomas pulled a folder from his bag and held it up. "I have copies of these photographs. Anyone who doubts my brother's story is welcome to look." Several people in the crowd leaned forward. A woman in the back called out, "Show us." Thomas walked down the aisle, holding up the photographs one by one. People gasped. A few women turned away. One man swore under his breath. Silas's voice rose, desperate to regain control. "That girl is troubled. She's been lying since her father died, making up stories for attention. I've tried to discipline her properly as any guardian would. You burned a letter into her skin." Ruth Calloway's voice rang clear from beside Cora. "That's not discipline, that's torture." "Ruth, you of all people should understand the need for proper discipline." "Don't you dare!" Ruth's voice was ice. "My husband died in your mind because you cut corners on safety. You paid me $50 and told me to be grateful. I've watched you buy this town piece by piece, person by person, until everyone was too scared or too indebted to stand against you. But not anymore." The crowd was shifting. Jack could feel it. The weight of public opinion swaying like a tree in wind, not broken yet, but bending. Judge Morrison stood clearing his throat. "Be that as it may, Mrs. Calloway, the law is clear. I signed guardianship papers. They're legal and binding. Unless someone can present evidence that Mr. Whitfield is genuinely unfit." "We have evidence," Thomas said. "The photographs showed discipline, not abuse. There's a difference in the eyes of the law." Morrison's tone was dismissive, but his eyes betrayed discomfort. He knew he was on shaky ground. "What about the embezzlement?" Ruth's words dropped like stones into water. The room went silent. Silas's face drained of color. "What?" $11,000 missing from your bank over 2 years, small amounts. Covered up to look like clerical errors. But it's theft, Silas. And you're planning to use Cora's inheritance to cover it up, aren't you? Sell off her land piece by piece, pocket the money, and no one's the wiser. You have no proof. I have the ledgers. I've been keeping track since you gave me access to manage the accounts after Richard died. You thought I was just a foolish old woman who couldn't read numbers. You were wrong." Ruth pulled a small notebook from her bag and held it high. The crowd leaned in, hungry for every word. Silas's mask finally cracked. His voice turned vicious. "You stole confidential bank records. That's a crime." "I documented theft. That's called evidence. Judge Morrison, I demand you issue a warrant for Mrs. Calloway's arrest immediately." Morrison hesitated. The crowd was watching him now, waiting to see whose side he'd take. His $11,000 debt to Silas hung in the air like a noose. The matter requires investigation before— "Issue the warrant." Silas's voice was a whip crack. "No." Sheriff Walsh stepped forward from the wall. Every eye turned to him. "I'm not arresting Ruth Calloway for exposing a theft." "You work for me, Walsh. I work for the law. There's a difference, though. You seem to have forgotten that." Walsh looked at the crowd. "I've been sheriff for 12 years. I've looked the other way on things I shouldn't have. Done favors I'm not proud of. But I draw the line at branding children." He turned to Silas. "If what Mrs. Calloway says is true about that embezzlement, you're under investigation. And until that investigation is complete, I don't think you should have custody of anyone, let alone a child who's terrified of you." The crowd erupted, half cheering, half shouting. Silas's men moved forward, hands on their guns. Jack's hand tightened on his pistol. Thomas raised his voice above the chaos. "I move for an emergency suspension of guardianship pending a full judicial review. Cora Whitfield should be placed in protective custody with an impartial guardian until her 12th birthday." "Seconded," Doc Carver called from the back. "This isn't a court," Silas roared. "You can't just vote away legal guardianship." "Why not?" a voice called from the crowd. It was a young rancher named Hayes. "You called this meeting, Silas. You wanted the town involved. Well, we're involved. Let's vote. Vote, vote." The chant started small but grew. Even some of Silas's own men looked uncertain. Judge Morrison stood sweating. "This is highly irregular." "So is branding children," Ruth shot back. Morrison looked at Silas, then at the crowd, calculating. Finally, his shoulders sagged. "Very well. Given the unusual circumstances, I'll allow a preliminary vote. Temporary suspension of guardianship pending investigation. Those in favor?" Hands shot up across the room. Not everyone. Silas still had his supporters, people who owed him too much to risk his wrath. But more than half the crowd raised their hands. Those opposed, fewer hands, significantly fewer. Morrison's voice was barely audible. "The ayes have it. Temporary suspension granted." Silas exploded. "You spineless coward! I own you. I own all of you." "No, you don't." The voice came from the back. An old miner named Carson Face, weathered as old leather. "You owned our debts. You owned our fear. But you don't own our souls, Whitfield. Not anymore." Silas turned to Jack, his eyes promising murder. "This isn't over, Brennan. Not by a long shot. You've got until May to pay your mortgage. And when you can't, I'll take everything. Your land, your home, and then I'll come for her." "You won't touch her." "We'll see." Silas looked at Judge Morrison. "This vote means nothing without a formal court order. I'll have it overturned in a week." He stormed out, his men following. The church doors slammed behind them like a gunshot. The crowd erupted in conversation, everyone talking at once. Jack felt Cora's hand trembling in his. He knelt down in front of her. "You all right?" She nodded, but tears streamed down her face. "Is it really over? For now?" Thomas put a hand on Jack's shoulder. "We bought some time, but Silas is right. This vote isn't legally binding. We need a real judge to review the case, and that takes time we may not have." "How long?" "Weeks, maybe months. The circuit judge won't be through Helena until March at the earliest." "After her birthday?" "Yes." Jack stood. "Then we make sure she survives until then." Ruth joined them, her face grim. "Silas won't wait. He's cornered now. Desperate. That makes him more dangerous than ever." "What do you think he'll do?" "I don't know. But whatever it is, it'll be soon." Ruth looked at Cora. "Child, you're going to have to be very careful. Stay close to Jack. Don't go anywhere alone." "Yes, ma'am." Doc Carver approached medical bag in hand. I want to check those wounds again, Cora. Make sure there's no infection setting in. They moved to a quiet corner of the church. Doc worked quickly, unwrapping bandages, examining the brand and the whip marks. His face remained professionally neutral, but Jack saw the anger in his eyes. Healing well considering, but this brand... Doc shook his head. It's going to scar badly. Nothing I can do about that. I don't care about the scar, Cora said quietly. I just want to stop hurting. Pain should fade in another week or so, but if it gets worse, if you see any red streaks or feel feverish, you tell Jack immediately. Infection can kill faster than you'd think. I will. Doc re-bandaged the wounds and packed up his bag. Jack a word. They stepped away. Doc's voice dropped low. That girl's been through hell. The physical wounds will heal. The other wounds... He trailed off. She needs stability, safety. Time to be a child again instead of just surviving. I'm trying to give her that. I know you are. But Silas is going to escalate. You need to be prepared for that. I am. Doc looked doubtful, but didn't press. All right, bring her by the office next week. I want to check the wounds again. People were starting to leave the church, casting glances at Jack and Cora as they passed. Some supportive, some fearful, some angry. The town was divided now, and that division would only deepen. Thomas gathered his papers. We should get back to the cabin. It's not safe to linger in town after dark. They rode back in silence, the setting sun painting the snow blood red. Jack kept his rifle across his saddle eyes, scanning the tree line for any sign of trouble. Nothing moved except wind-driven snow and the occasional crow. At the cabin, Ruth made dinner while Thomas reviewed his legal papers. Cora sat by the fire staring into the flames. Jack watched her from the corner of his eye, noting how small she looked, how fragile. What are you thinking about? He asked. She didn't look away from the fire. My papa. He used to say that brave isn't about not being scared. It's about being scared and doing the right thing anyway. She looked up at Jack. You're brave. I'm terrified. But you're still here, still fighting. That's what brave means. Jack pulled up a chair beside her. You're pretty brave yourself, standing up to Silas in front of the whole town. That took courage. I didn't do anything. You and Thomas and Ruth did all the talking. You showed up. Sometimes that's the bravest thing you can do, just showing up when every part of you wants to run and hide. Cora was quiet for a moment. Then, Jack, what happens if Silas wins? What happens if they make me go back? That's not going to happen. But what if it does? Jack took her hand. Then I'll come get you. I don't care what papers say or what laws they pass. I'll come get you. You could go to jail. I've been in worse places. She smiled just a little. It was the first real smile Jack had seen from her. Ruth called them to dinner. They ate together, the four of them, and for a brief moment it felt almost like family. Thomas told stories about his law practice, making Cora laugh with tales of ridiculous cases and absurd arguments. Ruth shared gossip from town, the harmless kind that felt normal and safe. Jack contributed little, but listened, letting the sound of conversation wash over him like a balm. After dinner, Thomas pulled Jack aside. I'm heading back to Virginia City tomorrow morning. I need to file the formal guardianship challenge and gather more evidence against Silas. But Jack, he hesitated. The mortgage. There's no legal way around it. If you can't pay by May 1st, Silas takes the ranch. Have you thought about what you'll do? Not much to think about. I don't have the money. I won't have the money, so I'll lose the ranch. And then what? Then I find somewhere else for Cora and me to go. Where Silas's reach extends beyond Helena. He's got connections throughout the territory. Then we go outside the territory, Canada, Oregon, somewhere he can't follow. Thomas looked pained. You'd really leave start over with nothing. I've started over before. After Sarah died. After Emma. This would just be one more time. Jack's voice was flat, matter-of-fact. Besides, I'm not starting with nothing. I've got Cora. That's something. You really care about her. Yeah, I do. Thomas was quiet for a moment. Then, Emma would have liked her. Jack's throat tightened. Yeah, she would have. I'm sorry I wasn't there for you. After Emma died, I should have. You're here now. That's what matters. The brothers stood in comfortable silence, the old wounds between them starting to heal. That night, Jack slept on his pallet near the fire rifle within arm's reach. He dozed, lightly aware of every sound: wind against the cabin, the fire crackling, the creak of old wood settling. Sometime after midnight he heard it. Hoofbeats, multiple horses, coming fast. Jack was on his feet in seconds, rifle in hand. Thomas, Ruth, get up. Thomas stumbled out of the bedroom, still half asleep. Ruth was faster, already dressed, a shotgun in her hands. What is it? Riders, coming fast. Jack moved to the window. Through the darkness he could see torches. At least 6 riders, maybe more. Get Cora. Back door, now. Ruth ran to Emma's room. Jack heard Cora's confused voice, then Ruth's urgent whisper. The riders pulled up outside. Someone pounded on the door. Brennan, we know you're in there. Not Silas's voice, one of his men, a thug named Dawson who ran the saloon and did Silas's dirty work. What do you want? Jack called through the door. We've got a court order. Judge Morrison signed it an hour ago. The guardianship suspension is overturned. Hand over the girl. In the middle of the night. That's not how court orders work. Don't matter how it works. You got 2 minutes to send her out or we're coming in. Thomas appeared beside Jack, his face pale. That's not a legal court order. Morrison can't overturn a public vote without a formal hearing. Tell that to the men with torches. If we give her up, we're not giving her up. Ruth emerged from the back room, Cora behind her. The girl's eyes were wide with terror. The back door, Ruth whispered. There's 2 more riders watching it. They were surrounded. Jack's mind raced. 6 men in front, 2 in back. 8 against 4, and one of their 4 was a terrified child. The odds weren't good. We need a distraction, Thomas said. Something to divide their attention. What kind of distraction? Ruth smiled grimly. The kind that involves fire. She moved to the fireplace and grabbed a burning log with the poker. Before Jack could stop her, she ran to the window and hurled it outside. It landed in the snow beside the riders' horses. The horses spooked. The men shouted. In the chaos, Ruth shoved the window open. Cora, run. Cora looked at Jack. He nodded. Go. We'll catch up. She climbed through the window and dropped into the snow. Ruth followed, surprisingly spry for her age. Thomas went next. Jack covered them, rifle aimed at the door as Dawson and his men tried to calm their horses. You're making a mistake, Brennan. Jack fired a shot through the door, high enough to miss, but close enough to make them think twice. Then he followed the others through the window. The cold hit him like a wall. He could see Cora running toward the tree line, Ruth and Thomas behind her. The 2 riders at the back were moving to intercept. Jack raised his rifle and fired. The shot went wide, but it got their attention. One rider turned toward him, the other kept after Cora. Jack ran. Snow grabbed at his legs. His breath came in white clouds. Behind him, he could hear Dawson and his men crashing through the cabin door. The rider was closing on Cora. 20 feet. 15. 10. Jack stopped, raised his rifle, and aimed. The world narrowed to the sight at the end of his barrel. He exhaled and squeezed the trigger. The shot cracked through the night. The rider jerked and fell from his horse, clutching his shoulder. Cora reached the trees. Ruth and Thomas followed. Jack ran after them, reloading as he moved. More shots behind him. Bullets whipped past too close. He dove behind a tree just as bark exploded where his head had been. Jack! Cora's voice terrified. Keep running. Don't stop. He fired back, forcing Dawson's men to take cover. Then he ran zigzagging through the trees, using the darkness and his knowledge of the land to stay ahead of them. The forest swallowed him. He could hear the men crashing through the underbrush behind him, their torches making them easy targets if it came to that. But Jack didn't want to kill anyone. He just wanted to get Cora to safety. He caught up with the others at a small ravine. Thomas was helping Ruth down the steep slope. Cora stood at the edge, shaking with cold and fear. "There's a cave about a mile north," Jack said. "Follow the ravine until you see a split boulder. The cave's just beyond it. Wait for me there." "Where are you going?" Thomas asked. "To slow them down. Buy you time. Go." "Jack, go." Thomas grabbed Cora's hand and started down the ravine. Ruth followed. Jack waited until they were out of sight, then moved back toward the sounds of pursuit. He found a good position behind a fallen log and waited. The torches grew closer. He could hear Dawson's voice, angry and frustrated. "Spread out. They can't have gone far." The men separated. Jack counted 5. That meant 3 were still back at the cabin or nursing wounds. He waited until one man was isolated from the others, then threw a rock in the opposite direction. The man turned, raising his torch. Jack slipped past him like a ghost, deeper into the forest. He did this 3 more times, leading the men away from the ravine, away from Cora. By the time they realized what he was doing, he was gone, melting into the darkness like smoke. He circled back and found the ravine, followed it north until he saw the split boulder. The cave was small, barely big enough for 4 people, but it was dry and hidden from view. "Jack." Cora threw herself at him the moment he entered. "I thought they got you." "Takes more than Dawson and his boys to get me." He looked at Thomas and Ruth. "Everyone all right?" "Cold, scared, but alive." Ruth was already gathering dry wood. "We need a fire, but we can't risk the smoke being seen. There's a vent at the back of the cave. Wind takes the smoke north away from town. We'll be safe enough for tonight." They built a small fire more for warmth than light. They huddled around it, silent and exhausted. "What now?" Thomas finally asked. Jack stared into the flames. "Now we wait. Let them search. When they give up and head back, we move." "Move where?" "I don't know yet." Cora's voice was small. "We can't go back to the cabin, can we?" "No. Silas knows where it is. He'll have men watching. So we just run? For now." Jack put his arm around her. "But only until we can figure out something better." She leaned against him, shivering. "I'm sorry. This is all my fault." "No, this is Silas's fault. All of it." Jack's voice was firm. "You didn't ask to be born into his family. You didn't ask for any of this. Don't you dare blame yourself." She nodded against his chest, but didn't seem convinced. They took turns keeping watch through the night. Jack took the last shift sitting at the cave entrance as dawn broke gray and cold. The forest was silent, except for wind through branches and the occasional call of a crow. He thought about the cabin, his home for 10 years, and felt nothing. It was just wood and stone. Emma and Sarah weren't there anymore. Their graves were on the hill behind the house, and he'd have to leave even those behind. But he had Cora, and somehow, impossibly, that was enough. When the sun was fully up, they emerged from the cave. Jack scouted ahead while the others waited. No sign of Dawson's men. They'd given up the search, at least for now. "Where do we go?" Ruth asked. Jack had been thinking about that all night. There was only one place that made sense. Beaver Creek, Cora's land. "But it's not hers yet," Thomas protested. "Not for another 2 weeks." "Doesn't matter. The land's empty. No buildings, but there's shelter caves, tree cover. We can survive there until her birthday. After that, the land's legally hers, and Silas will have a harder time running us off without causing a full legal incident. He could claim we're squatting. Let him try. 2 weeks. That's all we need. 2 weeks and she inherits. Then we dare Silas to touch her." Ruth nodded slowly. "It could work. If we can stay hidden that long." "We can. I know this land. Silas doesn't." Jack looked at Cora. "You up for this?" "It's going to be cold. Hard. We'll be living rough. I can do it. I've survived worse. Yes, Jack said softly. You have. They set out, moving carefully through the forest, avoiding roads and open spaces. By midday, they reached Beaver Creek, the water frozen solid snow piled high on both banks. Cora stopped and stared at the land that would soon be hers. Even covered in snow, it was beautiful rolling hills, thick forest, the creek winding through it all like a silver ribbon. Papa and I used to come here, she said. He'd say this land had good bones, strong, lasting. She looked at Jack. He'd be glad I'm sharing it with you. Jack's chest tightened. I'm glad too. They found a cave similar to the one they'd used the night before, larger and deeper. Jack and Thomas spent the afternoon gathering firewood and building up the entrance to block wind. Ruth and Cora melted snow for water and took inventory of their supplies. Not much. Some dried meat, a little bread, coffee. Enough for maybe 3 days if they rationed. I can hunt, Jack said. Deer, rabbit, whatever I can find. We won't starve. That night they ate sparingly and slept close to the fire. Jack took first watch again, sitting at the cave entrance, rifle across his knees. Thomas joined him an hour later. Can't sleep. Too much on my mind. Thomas sat beside his brother. This is insane. You know that, right? We're fugitives now. Dawson will tell Silas what happened. Silas will use it to paint you as a criminal. You'll lose any chance of getting legal custody. I don't care about legal custody. I care about keeping her alive. And after, when she turns 12, what then? Then she owns this land, and we build a life on it. Simple as that. Nothing about this is simple. Jack smiled in the darkness. No, but it's right. And sometimes that's all that matters. Thomas was quiet. Then, you really have changed. The Jack I knew 5 years ago wouldn't have risked everything for a stranger's child. The Jack you knew 5 years ago was already dead. Sarah and Emma took him with them when they went. He gestured at the cave, at Cora sleeping by the fire, at the frozen wilderness around them. This is someone new. Someone who finally has a reason to care if the sun comes up tomorrow. Because of her. Yeah, because of her. They sat in comfortable silence, two brothers watching the stars, and for the first time in a long time, Jack felt something like peace. The days blurred together in a rhythm of survival. Jack hunted at dawn, tracking deer and rabbit through the frozen forest, while Thomas kept watch and Ruth tended the fire. Cora helped where she could, melting snow for water, gathering kindling, learning to set snares the way Jack's father had taught him 30 years ago. On the third day, Jack brought down a young buck. The meat would last them a week if they were careful. Ruth showed Cora how to smoke strips of venison over the fire, preserving what they couldn't eat fresh. My mama used to do this, Cora said, watching the meat darken over the flames. Before she died. I was only 6, but I remember the smell. Ruth's weathered hands moved with practiced efficiency. What else do you remember about her? She sang, all the time. While she cooked, while she worked. Papa said she had the voice of an angel. Cora's voice went soft. Sometimes I can't remember what she looked like anymore. Just the sound of her singing. That's not a bad thing to hold on to. No, but I wish I could remember more. Her face, the way she smelled. Little things. Ruth was quiet for a moment. After my husband died, I was so angry I couldn't see straight. Angry at the mine, at Silas, at God, at my husband for leaving me alone. I thought if I held on to that anger tight enough, I wouldn't have to feel the grief underneath. You know what I learned? What? Anger's easier than sadness. But it's also emptier. It doesn't keep you warm at night. It doesn't fill the holes people leave behind. Ruth looked at Cora. You've got every right to be angry at your uncle, at what he did to you. But don't let that anger eat up the good memories you've got of your parents. Those are yours. He can't touch them unless you let him. Cora nodded, tears slipping down her cheeks. Ruth pulled her close and let her cry. Jack watched from the cave entrance, his chest tight. He'd spent 2 years drowning in anger and grief, pushing away anyone who tried to help. Thomas had been right at Sarah's funeral. Jack had been selfish, wallowing in his pain, like it was something precious to protect. He'd wasted 2 years when he could have been living. But maybe that's what Cora was giving him now. Not redemption, Jack didn't believe in that, but a second chance to get it right. To protect something worth protecting. To be the kind of man Emma would have been proud of instead of the ghost he'd become. Thomas joined him at the entrance. "We've got a problem." Jack's hand went to his rifle. "What kind?" "The kind where we're running out of time. Cora's birthday is in 10 days. 10 days living in a cave in February. She's strong, but Jack, this cold, the lack of proper food and shelter." "I know." "Do you? Because if she gets sick out here, there's no Doc Carver to help her. No medicine. Nothing." "What do you want me to do?" "Go back to town. Silas has men watching every road. I want you to think about whether surviving 2 more weeks is worth it if she dies of pneumonia before her birthday." Jack's jaw clenched. "She's not going to die." "You can't promise that." "Watch me." Thomas shook his head. "You're being stubborn." "I'm being careful. There's a difference." "Is there? Because from where I'm standing, you're risking her life to avoid risking your pride." Jack turned on his brother, anger flashing hot. "My pride. You think this is about pride? That girl's uncle branded her, beat her, and tried to kill her for money. If I take her back to town, she's dead within a week. Maybe not by his hand directly, but by accident or illness, or some convenient fall down the stairs. So yeah, I'll risk 2 weeks in a cave because the alternative is handing her over to a murderer. There are other options. Name one." Thomas opened his mouth, then closed it. He had no answer. Jack turned back to watch the forest. "I know what I'm doing. Trust me." "I do trust you. That's what scares me. You're willing to die for her. But are you willing to let her live if that means swallowing your anger and finding a compromise? There's no compromise with Silas." "Maybe not with him, but what about the town? The people who voted to suspend his guardianship? They're not all corrupt. Some of them genuinely wanted to help. And where are they now? We're hiding in a cave because those same people let Silas overturn the vote in the middle of the night." Thomas sighed. "Fair point." They stood in tense silence until Ruth called them for dinner. Smoked venison and weak coffee. It wasn't much, but it was warm, and it filled the hollow spaces. Cora ate slowly, savoring each bite. She'd gained a little weight in the past week, her face less gaunt, but she was still too thin, still jumped at sudden sounds, still woke up screaming most nights from dreams of Silas and dark cellars and brands burning into her skin. After dinner, she pulled out the oilskin bundle she'd carried through the blizzard. Inside was her father's will, but also something else, a small leather journal. "What's that?" Jack asked. "Papa's journal. He wrote in it every day. I found it after he died before Uncle Silas could take it." She opened it carefully, the pages brittle with age and moisture. He wrote about the ranch, about plans he had for it, things he wanted to build. She turned the pages and Jack saw sketches, a cabin by the creek, a barn fencing for cattle. Richard Whitfield had dreamed of building something lasting for his daughter. He wanted to build a cabin right there. Cora pointed through the cave entrance toward a clearing by the frozen creek. He said it was the perfect spot, high enough to avoid flooding, close enough to water with trees for windbreak. Jack looked at the spot she indicated. Richard had been right. It was perfect. "When you inherit, you can build it," Jack said. "Make your father's dream real." "Will you help me?" "If you want me to." "I do. I want—" She hesitated. "I want you to live there with me. I know I'll be 12 and legally I can own land, but I don't know how to run a ranch. I don't know how to build or farm or any of it. I need help. I need—" Her voice broke. I need family. Jack felt something crack open in his chest. Cora. I know you had a daughter. I know I'm not her. I'm not trying to replace her or anything. But maybe we could be family anyway. Not because of blood or law, but because we choose to be. Jack looked at Thomas, at Ruth, then back at Cora. This broken, brave girl who'd crawled through a blizzard clutching her father's dreams, who'd stood up to her abuser in front of the whole town, who'd survived things that would have destroyed most adults. Yeah, Jack said, his voice rough. Yeah, we can be family. Cora threw her arms around him and held on tight. Jack held her back and let himself feel what he'd been pushing down for days, not just protectiveness, but love. The terrifying, overwhelming love of a parent for a child. Ruth wiped her eyes. Thomas cleared his throat and looked away. That night, Jack couldn't sleep. He sat at the cave entrance watching the stars, thinking about the cabin Richard Whitfield had dreamed of building. Thinking about Cora inheriting in 9 days. Thinking about Silas and his desperation and what a desperate man might do. The answer came at dawn. Jack was checking his snares when he heard horses. Multiple riders moving fast through the forest. He dropped behind a fallen log and watched. Silas rode in front, 6 men behind him. They weren't searching randomly. They were heading straight for Beaver Creek. Jack's blood ran cold. Someone had talked. Someone had told Silas where they were hiding. He ran back to the cave, moving as fast as he dared. When he burst through the entrance, everyone was already awake, alerted by the sound of hoofbeats. They're coming. 7 riders. Maybe 5 minutes out. Thomas grabbed his gun. Ruth checked her shotgun. Cora's face went white. How did they find us? Ruth asked. Doesn't matter. We need to move. Now. They grabbed what they could. Weapons, the oilskin bundle, a little food, and ran. Jack led them deeper into the forest, away from the creek, into rougher terrain, where horses couldn't follow easily. Behind them, he heard Silas's voice echoing through the trees. Brennan, I know you're here. This is Whitfield land, my land, until that girl's birthday. You're trespassing. Jack didn't answer. He just ran, helping Cora over rough ground, making sure Ruth kept up. Thomas covered their rear, gun drawn. They reached a rocky outcrop and scrambled up. From the high ground, Jack could see Silas and his men spreading out, searching. We can't keep running, Thomas whispered. They'll run us down. We don't have to outrun them, just outlast them. Silas isn't a young man, neither are his hired guns. The cold will drive them back eventually. And if it doesn't, Jack checked his rifle. Then I'll make sure they don't take Cora. They hunkered down behind the rocks and waited. The temperature dropped as the sun climbed higher, one of those perverse winter days where clear skies meant brutal cold. Jack watched his breath freeze in the air and hoped Silas's men were suffering worse. Hours passed. The searchers moved through the forest below, but the rocky terrain and thick brush hid Jack's group well. Finally, as the sun started to sink, Silas called his men back. This is pointless. They could be anywhere. His voice carried up the rocks, frustrated and angry. We'll come back tomorrow with more men. Search every inch of this property. The riders left. Jack waited until he couldn't hear the hoofbeats anymore, then waited another hour to be safe. We can't go back to the cave, Ruth said. They know we're here. No, but we can't keep running either. Cora's already shaking from cold, and we left most of our supplies behind. Thomas looked grim. What then? Jack thought hard. They needed shelter, warmth, and safety. Somewhere Silas wouldn't think to look. Somewhere close enough to Beaver Creek that Cora could claim her inheritance when the day came. Then it hit him. The old Jacobson place, about 2 miles east of here. That's been abandoned for years, Ruth said. Exactly. Roof's probably half collapsed, but it's still standing. Silas wouldn't think to check it because it's not technically on Whitfield land. Whose land is it on? Mine, or it was. Property line runs through there. When Silas forecloses in May, he'll get it too. But until then, it's mine, and I say we can shelter there. They moved carefully through the darkening forest. The temperature kept dropping. Cora's lips were turning blue again despite the blanket wrapped around her shoulders. The Jacobson place appeared through the trees like a ghost, a small cabin with a sagging roof and broken windows, but 4 walls and a door that still shut. It was something. Inside was bare, except for an old table and a rusted stove. But the stove's chimney was intact, and there was enough dry wood piled in the corner to get a fire started. Jack got the fire going while Thomas and Ruth blocked the broken windows with boards torn from the walls. Within an hour, the cabin was almost warm, almost livable. Cora sat close to the stove, hands extended toward the heat. "How long can we stay here?" "As long as we need to," Jack said. "This is still my land. Legally, I can be here. Silas won't see it that way." "Silas can go to hell," Ruth snorted. "Eloquent as always, Jack." Despite everything, Cora smiled. They ate cold venison and melted snow for water. The fire burned low but steady. For the first time in days, they could all breathe without the immediate fear of discovery. 8 days, Cora said quietly. 8 more days until my birthday. "We'll make it," Jack promised. "How can you be sure?" "Because we've made it this far. Because you're stronger than Silas thinks. Because—" He paused. "Because your father's dream deserves to come true." Cora pulled out the journal again and opened it to the sketches. "Tell me about building. Tell me how we do it." So Jack told her. About laying foundations and raising walls. About choosing timber and setting windows. About all the small practical details of turning Richard Whitfield's drawings into reality. Thomas and Ruth listened too, and slowly the conversation expanded not just about building a cabin, but about building a life. About cattle and crops. About neighbors and community. About the future instead of just survival. For a few hours in that broken-down cabin with a failing roof, they forgot about Silas and danger and fear. They just talked, just planned, just hoped. That night, Cora slept without nightmares, for the first time since Jack had found her in the snow. The next morning, Jack woke to find Thomas gone. His gun was missing too. Jack shook Ruth awake. "Where's Thomas?" He was here when I went to sleep." They searched the cabin. Thomas's coat was gone. So were his boots. He'd left deliberately. Jack found a note wedged in the doorframe, written on a page torn from Cora's father's journal. "Jack, I'm going to town. Going to try one more time to get a real judge to hear the case. If I can get an emergency order, we can bring Cora in safely. This running and hiding, it's not sustainable. She deserves better. I'll be back by nightfall. If I'm not, get Cora to her birthday by any means necessary. Your brother Thomas." Jack crumpled the note. Idiot. "He's trying to help," Ruth said. "He's walking into a trap. Silas will have men watching for anyone from our group. The minute Thomas shows his face in town." He didn't finish. He didn't have to. "What do we do?" Ruth asked. Jack looked at Cora, still sleeping peacefully by the dying fire. 7 days until her birthday. 7 days until she'd be legally protected by property ownership. 7 days that suddenly felt like an eternity. "We wait. If Thomas isn't back by dark, I go find him. And leave Cora here with just me." "You're a better shot than most men I know, Ruth. You can protect her." "That's not the point. The point is we're scattered vulnerable. That's exactly what Silas wants." Jack knew she was right, but what choice did they have? The day crawled past. Jack hunted nearby, keeping the cabin in sight at all times. Ruth kept watch, her shotgun never far from hand. Cora tried to help, but mostly just sat by the window watching for Thomas. Afternoon came, then evening. The sun set in a blaze of orange and red, and still no Thomas. Jack loaded his rifle. "I'm going." "Jack, you can't. He's my brother. I'm not leaving him. And if it's a trap, then I'll spring it and deal with the consequences." Jack looked at Cora. "Stay here. Stay quiet. If anyone comes besides me or Thomas, you run. You understand, straight north through the forest until you hit the main road, then follow it east to Deer Lodge. There's a judge there named Whitaker. Tell him everything. He'll help you. I don't want you to go. I know, but I have to. Cora stood and hugged him tight. Please come back. I will. I promise. He left before she could see the doubt in his eyes. The ride to Helena took 2 hours in the dark. Jack approached from the south, avoiding the main roads. The town was quiet, most people already home for the night. But lights burned in the sheriff's office. Jack tied his horse behind the general store and approached on foot. Through the office window, he could see Sheriff Walsh sitting at his desk, alone. Jack tapped on the glass. Walsh jumped hand-going to his gun. Then he saw who it was and cursed. He opened the door. Brennan, you got a death wish. Where's my brother? Walsh's face was grim. Inside, in a cell. Jack's stomach dropped. What charges? Aiding and abetting a fugitive, trespassing, assault. Assault, Thomas wouldn't. Silas claims Thomas attacked him when he refused to discuss the guardianship case. Says Thomas threatened him with a gun. That's a lie. Probably. But Silas has 3 witnesses who'll testify to it. Walsh looked tired, defeated. I'm sorry, Jack. I tried to talk Judge Morrison out of signing the arrest warrant, but Silas pushed hard. The judge caved. Let me see him. I can't. Bill, please. Walsh hesitated, then nodded. 5 minutes. That's all I can give you. He led Jack to the cells. Thomas sat on a narrow cot, his face bruised, his knuckles bloody. What happened? Jack asked. Thomas looked up, shame and anger warring in his eyes. I got stupid. Thought I could reason with Morrison. Silas was there. Started saying things about Cora, vile things. I took a swing at him. His men jumped me. Jesus, Thomas? I know. I'm sorry. I thought I could help, and instead I made things worse. When's the hearing? Tomorrow morning. But Jack, it's all theater. Morrison's going to convict me, probably sentence me to 30 days. Which means I won't be able to help when Cora's birthday comes. We'll figure something out. How I'm locked up. You're wanted. Ruth's just one old woman. Silas is winning Jack. We're out of moves. Jack gripped the bars. We're not out of moves until Cora's dead or married off or signing papers. Until then, we keep fighting. With what hope? If that's all we got, then yeah, with hope. Walsh appeared at the end of the hall. Time's up, Jack. You need to go. Jack nodded. He looked at his brother one more time. I'll get you out. Don't. Focus on Cora. She's what matters. Jack left through the back door and made it to his horse without being seen. But as he rode out of town, he knew Thomas was right about one thing. They were running out of moves. When he got back to the Jacobson cabin, Ruth met him at the door, her face pale. What happened? Where's Thomas? Jail. Silas set him up. Jack pushed past her. Where's Cora? Sleeping. Jack, what are we going to do? I don't know yet. But he did know one thing. Time was running out. In 6 days, Cora would turn 12. In 6 days, the land would be hers. In 6 days, they'd either be safe or dead. And Silas Whitfield was not a patient man. That night, as Jack sat watch, he heard it. Hoofbeats again. Multiple riders. Coming fast. Not searching this time. Hunting. Jack shook Ruth awake. They're coming. We need to run. How many? Too many. They grabbed Cora, barely awake, and ran out the back door into the forest. Behind them, they heard men shouting, torches blazing. There, I see them. Gunshots cracked through the night. Bullets whipped past. Jack pushed Cora ahead of him, using his body as a shield. They ran until their lungs burned, until the sounds of pursuit faded, until they couldn't run anymore. They collapsed in a ravine, gasping for breath. Cora was crying silently. Ruth was bleeding from a cut on her arm, where a bullet had grazed her. 6 days. Jack said more to himself than anyone else. Just 6 more days. But 6 days might as well have been 6 years. Silas had them on the run, scattered, desperate. And desperate people made mistakes. Jack looked at Cora, her face streaked with tears and dirt, her eyes hollow with fear, and made a decision. "We're done running." "What?" Ruth stared at him. "I said we're done running. Silas wants a fight. We'll give him one. But on our terms, not his." "Jack, we can't." "Yes, we can." His voice was hard as iron. "We've got 6 days. 6 days to turn the tables. 6 days to make Silas Whitfield regret the day he ever touched this girl." "How?" Jack smiled, and it was not a kind smile. "By giving him exactly what he wants. Me." Ruth grabbed Jack's arm. "You can't be serious. You turn yourself in and Silas will kill you." "Maybe. Or maybe he'll be so focused on me he'll forget about Cora for 6 days. Jack looked at the girl huddled against a tree, shaking with cold and fear. "That's all we need. 6 days. Then she inherits and everything changes. Or Silas kills you and takes her anyway." "Not if we do this right." Jack pulled Ruth aside, lowering his voice. "Listen, Silas wants me because I'm the one who challenged him publicly. I'm the one who made him look weak in front of the whole town. If I surrender offer to leave the territory, promise never to come back, he might take that deal." "Why would he?" "Because having me gone solves his problem. No more Jack Brennan stirring up trouble. No more questions about what he did to Cora. The town forgets and he gets what he wants. Except Cora. Except Cora. But that's where you come in." Jack's eyes were hard with determination. "You take her somewhere safe. Somewhere Silas won't think to look. Keep her hidden for 6 days. On February 15th, you take her to the land office in Helena. File the inheritance papers. Make it official and public. Once she's a legal property owner with witnesses, Silas can't touch her without causing a scandal he can't afford." Ruth shook her head. "There are too many ways this goes wrong." "You got a better plan?" She didn't answer because they both knew there was no better plan. They were cornered, exhausted, and running out of time. Cora's voice cut through the darkness. "No." They turned. She was standing now, her face set with a determination that made her look older than 12. "No," she repeated. "You're not doing this for me. You're not sacrificing yourself. Cora, I won't let you." Her voice cracked but didn't break. "My whole life people have made decisions for me. Papa died and Uncle Silas decided I was his property. You found me and you decided to protect me. Thomas decided to go to town and ended up in jail. Everyone keeps deciding things, and I keep being the reason people get hurt." "That's not—" "It is." Tears streamed down her face. "Don't you see Uncle Silas is right about one thing? As long as people are fighting over me, people will keep getting hurt. Maybe it would be better if I just signed the papers, gave him the land. Then everyone could stop fighting." Jack crossed the space between them in 3 strides and knelt in front of her. Look at me, Cora." She did, her eyes full of pain and guilt. "Your uncle is not right about anything. Not one goddamn thing. He's a coward and a thief and a murderer, and the only reason he's winning is because good people are too scared to stand up to him. But I'm not scared anymore. You know why?" She shook her head. "Because you taught me something. That little girl who crawled through a blizzard, who stood up in front of the whole town, who survived things that would have broken most grown men, she taught me that some things are worth fighting for. Some things are worth dying for. And you are one of those things." "But Jack—" "No. Listen. Your father left you that land because he wanted you to have a future. A real future, not one where you're owned by a man who sees you as property. If I have to trade my life to make sure you get that future, then that's a trade I'll make every single time." Cora threw her arms around his neck and sobbed. "I don't want you to die." I'm not planning on it. I'm just planning on giving you 6 days. That's all. Just 6 days. Ruth's voice was thick with emotion. And if Silas doesn't keep his word, if he takes you and comes after her anyway, then you run. You take Cora and you run until you're so far away Silas can't follow. Canada, Oregon, California. I don't care. You keep her safe. Jack. Promise me, Ruth. Promise me you'll protect her no matter what. Ruth wiped her eyes. I promise. Jack held Cora for a long moment, memorizing the feel of her small frame, the sound of her breathing, the way she trusted him completely, despite every reason not to trust anyone ever again. Then he stood. We do this at first light. Silas will have men watching the roads, but I'll make sure they see me. Lead them away from you. Ruth, you head north to the old mining camp at Silver Creek. It's abandoned, but the cabins are still standing. Stay there until Cora's birthday. How will we know if you're... Ruth stopped, unable to finish. You won't. But if I'm not at the land office on February 15th, you go ahead without me. File those papers. Make sure she inherits. That's all that matters. They spent the rest of the night in that ravine, taking turns sleeping while one kept watch. Jack didn't sleep at all. He sat with his rifle across his knees, watching Cora's face in the firelight, committing every detail to memory. Just before dawn, Ruth woke Cora gently. Time to go, child. Cora looked at Jack. This is really happening. Yeah, it is. What if I never see you again? Jack's throat tightened. Then you remember what I told you. You're real. You're valuable. You're worth every single thing your father dreamed for you. And you don't let anyone, not Silas, not anyone make you believe different. She nodded, tears silent on her cheeks. Jack pulled something from his pocket. Sarah's wedding ring, the one he'd carried for 3 years. He pressed it into Cora's hand. My wife's ring. She'd want you to have it. I can't. You can. It's not worth much, but it's real gold. If things go bad, if you need money, you can sell it. Or... His voice broke. Or you can keep it. Remember that you had family once. Even if it was just for a little while. Cora clutched the ring like a lifeline. Then she stood on her toes and kissed Jack's weathered cheek. Thank you for saving me. Thank you for letting me. Ruth took Cora's hand. Come on, we need to move before full light. Jack watched them disappear into the pre-dawn darkness heading north. He waited until he couldn't hear their footsteps anymore. Then he mounted his horse and rode south toward Helena, toward whatever fate was waiting. He made sure to be seen. Rode the main road instead of hiding. By the time the sun was fully up, he'd passed 3 groups of Silas's men. They recognized him immediately, shouted, gave chase. Jack led them on a winding path through the hills, always staying just ahead, making them work for it. He wanted them focused on him, wanted every eye in Silas's network, tracking his movements instead of searching for Cora. By midday, he'd collected a posse of at least a dozen riders. Time to end this. He rode straight to the church in the center of Helena and dismounted. The church doors were open. Sunday service had just ended. Perfect. Jack walked inside. Every head turned. I'm looking for Silas Whitfield. An old woman in the front pew pointed toward the vestry. He's meeting with Judge Morrison. Jack walked to the vestry door and kicked it open. Silas and Morrison looked up, startled. Then Silas's face split into a triumphant smile. Jack Brennan, finally come to your senses. I've come to make a deal. You're not in a position to negotiate. I am if you want this to end without the whole territory knowing what you did to your niece. Jack's voice was calm, controlled. I'm willing to leave. Take myself out of the picture completely. But in exchange, you leave Cora alone. Silas laughed. Why would I agree to that when I can just take you both? Because you haven't been able to find her. Because the longer this drags on, the more people start asking questions. Because in 5 days, she turns 12 and inherits land you need. Jack leaned against the doorframe. I'm offering you an easy solution. Take me out of the equation and the problem goes away. Silas studied him. Where is she? Safe. That's all you need to know. Not good enough. It'll have to be, because you're not getting more. Jack crossed his arms. Here's the deal. You let me walk out of here. I leave the territory. I give you my word, I'll never come back, never contact Cora again. In exchange, you drop all charges against my brother, you leave Ruth Calloway alone, and you don't pursue Cora. And if she inherits, then she inherits. It's her land legally left to her by her father. You've got no claim to it unless she's dead or incompetent, and I know you've been planning to make one of those happen. Silas's smile vanished. Careful, Brennan. Or what you'll brand me too. Jack's voice was ice. Everyone in this town knows what you did. They saw the photographs. They heard the testimony. The only reason you're not in jail is because you own the judge. But that protection only goes so far. You push too hard, hurt too many people, and even bought law won't save you. Judge Morrison shifted uncomfortably. Perhaps Mr. Brennan has a point, Silas. This situation has become rather... Shut up. Silas stood, his face red with rage. You don't dictate terms to me, Brennan. I own this town. I own you. No, you don't. Jack's voice was deadly quiet. You owned my mortgage, but you're not getting my ranch now. You wanted Cora's land, but you're not getting that either. All you've got is pride and anger, and neither of those will keep you warm at night when the whole territory knows you tortured a child for money. I never... You branded her. Jack's roar silenced the room. You whipped her. You locked her in a cellar and starved her. And everyone knows it because Doc Carver documented every single injury. Those photographs are copies, Silas. Lots of copies, spread all over the territory. You kill me, you kill Cora, and those pictures still exist. Your reputation still gets destroyed. The silence stretched. Morrison looked like he wanted to disappear through the floor. Silas's hands shook with fury, but behind the fury, Jack saw something else. Fear. Silas was finally scared. What do you want? Silas's voice was tight. I told you, I walk away. You leave Cora alone. She inherits her father's land on her birthday and you never go near her again. And if I refuse, then I make sure every newspaper from here to San Francisco knows exactly what kind of man you are. I've already written the letters. They're with people you don't control. If anything happens to me or Cora, those letters get mailed. It was a bluff. Jack hadn't written any letters, but Silas didn't know that. The silence stretched again. Finally, Silas spoke. Fine. You leave the territory. Today. I want you gone by sunset. In exchange, I'll drop the charges against your brother and leave the old woman alone. And the girl. He paused. The girl inherits her land. But Brennan, if you ever come back, if I ever see your face in Montana territory again, the deal's off. I'll hunt you down and make you wish you'd died in that blizzard with her. Understood. Judge Morrison, draw up the papers. Morrison scrambled for his writing implements, clearly relieved the confrontation was ending without bloodshed. While Morrison wrote, Jack and Silas stared at each other across the vestry. Two men who'd never asked for this fight, but who'd committed to it completely. You really care about that girl, Silas said finally. Yeah, I do. Why, she's nothing to you. She's everything to me. That's the difference between us. You see people as things to be owned. I see them as reasons to keep breathing. Morrison finished writing and handed the document to Silas. It was simple a statement that Jack Brennan was voluntarily leaving Montana territory and all charges against him and his associates were dropped. Jack read it carefully. Then he signed. There. It's done. Silas signed below him. You've got until sunset. After that, every man I own will be looking for you. I'll be long gone. Jack walked out of the vestry through the church into the bright winter sunlight. He could feel eyes on him from every direction. The whole town had gathered, drawn by the commotion. Sheriff Walsh stood at the bottom of the church steps. "It's done," he asked. "It's done. Thomas gets released. Already sent word. He'll be out within the hour." Walsh held out his hand. "For what it's worth, Brennan, you did good. That girl's lucky you found her." "I'm the lucky one." Jack mounted his horse and rode to the edge of town. He didn't look back. Looking back would make leaving harder, and this was already the hardest thing he'd ever done. At the town limits, he stopped one more time, pulled out a piece of paper and wrote quickly, "Cora, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. I'm sorry I couldn't stay to see you inherit your father's land, but I know you'll make him proud. Build that cabin by the creek, raise cattle, plant a garden, live the life he wanted for you. And remember, you were always real, you were always valuable, you were always loved. Jack." He gave the note to a boy passing by with a penny to deliver it to Ruth Calloway at Silver Creek in 5 days. Then he rode north toward the border, toward a future without Cora or Montana or anything he'd come to care about. But he'd done it. He'd bought her 6 days. He'd kept his promise. 5 days later, on a cold February morning, Ruth Calloway walked into the Helena land office with Cora Whitfield. The girl was clean dressed in new clothes Ruth had bought with money Jack had left them. Her hair was brushed. Her wounds were healing. The land clerk looked up from his desk. "Help you. This is Cora Whitfield. Today is her 12th birthday. She's here to claim her inheritance under the terms of her father's will." The clerk checked his records, checked the will Ruth handed him, checked Cora's birth certificate. "Everything appears to be in order. Miss Whitfield, on behalf of the territory of Montana, I hereby recognize your ownership of 200 acres along Beaver Creek as designated in your father's last will and testament. Congratulations, you're a landowner." Cora's hand shook as she signed the papers. When it was done, she looked at Ruth. "It's really mine. It's really yours." They walked out of the land office into the sunshine. Across the street, Silas Whitfield stood watching from his bank window. His face was stone, but he made no move to stop them. Doc Carver was waiting outside with Thomas Brennan released from jail, and bruised but alive. "Well?" Doc asked. Ruth held up the papers. "It's done. She owns it." Thomas smiled. "Your father would be proud, Cora." "I wish Jack was here." "He is," Ruth said softly. "Maybe not in body, but in spirit. Everything he did was to get you to this moment." They rode out to Beaver Creek together, Ruth, Cora, Thomas, and Doc Carver. The land was covered in snow, but spring was coming. Soon the creek would thaw, and the land would wake up, and there would be work to do. Cora walked to the spot her father had marked in his journal. The perfect place for a cabin. She closed her eyes and could almost see it, walls rising, a roof taking shape, smoke from a chimney home. "We'll build it come spring," Thomas said. "I'll help. So will others. Half the town felt guilty about not standing up to Silas sooner. They'll make it right by helping you." "I'd like that." That night, they camped on Cora's land. Ruth made dinner over an open fire. They talked about plans for the ranch, about the cabin they'd build, about the future. Just before sleep, Cora pulled out Jack's note and read it again by firelight. Then she took Sarah's wedding ring from around her neck, where she wore it on a chain, and held it tight. "Thank you, Jack," she whispered to the stars, "for everything." 6 months later, the cabin was finished. Simple but sturdy, with glass windows and a stone fireplace. Cora stood on the porch, watching the sunset paint Beaver Creek gold and orange. Ruth came out and stood beside her. "Your papa would love this." "I think he does, wherever he is." "You did good, Cora. Built something real." "We built it. You, me, Thomas, Doc Carver, all the people from town who helped. We built it together." "That's what family does." Movement on the road caught Cora's eye. A rider approaching slowly. She tensed, then relaxed as the figure came closer. It was Jack. He looked older, thinner, like he'd been traveling hard. but his eyes were the same steady kind, fierce when they needed to be. He dismounted at the edge of the property and stood there uncertain. Cora ran. She covered the distance between them in seconds and threw herself into his arms. "You came back." "Yeah." His voice was rough. "I couldn't stay away. Broke my promise to Silas, but I figured—" "He's gone," Ruth called from the porch. "Silas, the bank auditors finally caught him. Embezzlement, fraud, whole list of charges. He's in Deer Lodge Prison. 15 years. Jack's eyes widened. "When? 3 months ago. The evidence we gathered, the testimony from townspeople, once they weren't scared anymore, it all came out. Justice caught up with him." "So I can stay." Cora pulled back and looked up at him. "This is your home, Jack. It always was. The cabin has a room for you if you want it." Jack looked at the cabin, at the land, at Ruth and Thomas, on the porch, at Cora smiling up at him, with complete trust and love. "Yeah," he said, his voice breaking. "I want it." They walked to the cabin together. That night they ate dinner as a family. Chosen family, not blood, but real in all the ways that mattered. And later, when Jack tucked Cora into bed in her room in the cabin her father had dreamed of, she asked him one more time, "Am I real, Jack?" He smiled and brushed the hair from her face. "You're the realest thing in my life, Cora. Always have been. Always will be." She smiled and closed her eyes, and Jack watched her sleep for a moment, before returning to the fire where Ruth and Thomas waited. "She's going to be all right," Ruth said. "Yeah, she is." Because Cora Whitfield had survived the worst things humans could do to each other, and she'd come out the other side with her soul intact. She'd built a home on land that was truly hers. She'd found family in the most unlikely places. She'd learned that real didn't come from papers or brands or what powerful men said. Real came from love, from sacrifice, from people willing to walk through blizzards for you. And that was something no one could ever take away. Jack Brennan sat by the fire in the cabin he'd helped build, surrounded by family he'd chosen, protecting a girl who'd taught him how to live again, and for the first time in 3 years, he felt whole. The brand on Cora's shoulder would scar. The memories would fade, but never disappear completely. But she would grow up knowing she was loved, valued, and real, not because of what she owned, but because of who she was. And that made every sacrifice, every risk, every terrifying moment worth it. Family wasn't blood or law or pieces of paper. It was who you'd walk through a blizzard for and who'd walk through one for you.